Good morning.
Good morning.
I hope there's still energy left in the room, right? So we have a whole day and then we have also the next day to come through, right? So I'll make it interesting as possible. So first of all, I would like to really thank the Indian Chemical News team for giving me the opportunity to present about not just the Indian growth market, but talk about what Dow is also doing and how some of the initiatives Dow is actually taking and working with the Indian chemical industry and how we can really work together, right? So that would be part of my presentation, but it's an immense pleasure for me to be here with some of the eminent speakers, and with some of them I've really worked when I was in the industry and when I was a student. So it's a real pleasure. So with that, I would quickly start with the presentation. I have somewhere around 10 slides, right? So I will not bore you to that extent. But as you see, we are talking about the global chemical market and Indian opportunity. And as Praveen mentioned initially, the refinery with the AI one is something which I'm showing you a real refinery. So the real refinery needs to work together in sync with the AI refinery. So that's important to move forward. So to start with, what I will do is I will give you a very, very quick introduction of Dow in India. So Ajay, if you can move to the next slide. Okay, I can do that. Okay, I have the stuff here. Okay, good. So I think Dow doesn't need an introduction, but Dow Chemical International Private Limited, based out of Airoli, that's where our headquarters are. Our vision is to be the most innovative, customer-centric, inclusive, and sustainable material science company in the world, right? So all those four pointers are very, very important, is because you cannot do with innovation. You cannot be without a customer-centric approach. When you're talking about all that growth which comes through, you need to be very, very inclusive. You need to have diversity, not only in gender, but in your thought processes. And then you are actually talking about sustainability, which is something which I will touch upon in details. Dow operates in three different segments. One is called performance materials and coatings, which has the silicon piece, the silicon base material, and the siloxanes. And then you also have the acrylic backbone. And why I'm talking about this is I will talk about sustainability piece in this particular segment. Then you have industrial intermediate and infrastructure, where we are talking about C2, C3, ethylene oxide, propylene oxide, ethylene oxide, and propylene oxide blends. We're talking about construction chemicals, cellulosics. Those are the backbone which come in here, and how that industry is moving. And then we talk about the packaging and specialty plastics and hydrocarbons, and how the hydrocarbons are really making a big change globally, is something which we'll be talking about. And if you're looking at the packaging, it's majorly polyethylene, and talking about different grades of polyethylene, right? And from the hydrocarbon perspective, you're actually talking about refinery, you're talking about cracking of naphtha, you're talking about ethane, natural gas, and how the whole value chain is what we are talking about with respect to carbon neutrality, right? So that's a quick overview about Dow in India. We are a great place to work certified, not just for women, for our employees, for in manufacturing. So we focus majorly on people, because that's one important piece. So with that, I move to the next slide. And if you look at here, I think some of the speakers here already mentioned about how India is doing, right? We all know that India has now become the fourth largest economy, and I think we are moving towards becoming the third largest economy in the next 2 to 3 years, right? We are seeing good overall with respect to strong balance sheets. You have seen some of the Indian companies talking about their balance sheet. Their results are pretty good. You're talking about corporates, which are actually really doing good. Banks, if you see, the NPS have come down. Household savings have slightly gone up. And if you're looking at government from a trade deficit perspective, from an overall FDI perspective, from an overall investment perspective, I think we are in a very, very good shape. A lot of government initiatives. I think we heard something from Andhra Pradesh team today, we are hearing it from the Maharashtra team and across. There's a lot of incentive which the government of India is giving. There's a lot of policy support, $18.7 billion. That's a huge amount. We are seeing a huge increase in the production of chemicals. Overall, by 2030, we are supposed to be around 304 billion. The numbers which we have right now are somewhere around 240, 250. So I think we should be able to reach that $304 billion number by 2030, right? And then if you are looked at FDI in chemicals that have been significant over the years, last year was good. This year, we have a slight reduction in the FDI, but that's majorly coming in with respect to the capital spending across the globe. That's really down, right? So these are some of the good piece of the Indian economy, what we are talking about. Now let's look at some of the other pieces, right? So if you look at the Indian GDP overall, we have somewhere around around 54.7%, around 55%, which is services, right? So that's a significant portion of our GDP, and that has significantly risen over the period of time. So that contributes a big way. Earlier, it used to be a majorly an agricultural economy. Services was not that big, but you see services going up significantly. Out of these pie, we have somewhere around 27, 28%, which is overall industry, and we see somewhere around 14 to 15% manufacturing, right? Now, within that, the chemical industry is somewhere around 7%. So if we have to really, really grow, and we're talking about the chemical industry, we need to significantly up our manufacturing capabilities, right? And we need to do those investment which we are promising moving forward by 2030. We have somewhere around 8.5 million metric tons of capacity which is coming on stream in the next 2 years, right? If that happens, then the significant portion of manufacturing will go up and the chemical industry will see a lot more stuff. On the services side, what you're actually seeing is that, which is actually very nice, is it's not just IT, you're actually seeing a lot of investment and a lot of services coming in with respect to R&D, which is important for us. Then it also comes in with respect to the financial services. You're talking about a lot more global supply chain roles, HR roles, which are coming in here, right? So it's kind of a blend. Now let's look at what is happening in the industry, right? And it is very, very important for us to understand that how the consumption and the capacity expansion is going hand in hand, right? So if you look at, where's the pointer here? This one? Okay, fine. So if you look here, right? So you're looking at the private consumption and you're looking at investment, right? So what has significantly happened over the period of time that we have significantly increased our investment capabilities, or our investment is going up. But if you see our consumption, that is significantly going down, right? And that's where I think the government of India has taken a right stand to look at reducing our tax liability, kind of reducing our interest rate. Because we, as India, we need to increase our consumption if we are putting in that kind of investment. Otherwise, we have to be completely dependent on exports, right? And that's where we still have a challenge of the geopolitical scenario which we are seeing in, right? So if our own consumption goes up drastically, then whatever expansions we are putting in, we would be safe to that extent of our capacity utilization, right? So it's an important parameter to look at, because whatever we are investing, we need a return on investment, right? So ROI is important for us, right? So that's where it's very critical that with those expansion coming on stream, the consumption goes up, or we definitely look at being a low-cost manufacturing. So for that, there are things which we have to do, right? So those are important things where where we have to look at. It's good that even the gross fixed capital formation is increasing. So that means we are investing a lot, not just from the government, but we are seeing a lot of investment coming in from private players, which anyway my colleague was actually showing a few minutes back. But it is important to look at few things. If you look at what's happening, if you look at 2000, if you look at 2017, and if you look at 2030, and this is something which CEFIC reported, you see rest of Asia is significantly getting down on the manufacturing side, right? But if you look at China, by 2030, they're 50% of manufacturing, right? And significant amount in the chemical industry. So if we really have to be there, we have to increase this portion, which is I think somewhere around 18%, and India contributes almost maybe 20 to 30% of that. We have to significantly increase and improve our numbers there to be competitive, right? Okay, US is coming down, Europe is coming down, there's a big opportunity for India to move forward. But there are challenges. There's a secular stagnation. What is a secular stagnation? Secular stagnation means the industry goes through ups and downs, right? And what we are seeing is that the downward phase in the industry which we are going through is getting extended significantly. The global GDP is just 2.5%, and some estimates with the Middle East war is that it can go down to 2.2%, right? And if it is everything goes up, then it goes up to 3.5%. But that 3.5% is actually not coming down. They're not seen. They are not showing up that we will go to that 3.5% GDP. So this particular period is going to stay, and we have to be resilient to go through this period. All our investments are actually happening in this period when the chemical industry is going through a downturn, right? So it's important for us to really understand what is going to happen. You know, global trade, I don't want to speak about it, restrictive practices, FDI, China's manufacturing challenges, climate change, different kind of regulations coming in different countries. So all that are important for us to understand, because we just cannot talk about growth if we don't understand what kind of complications which we will have and take care of those challenges for our 2047 growth plan, right? So that's where it is significantly important to do 4 or 5 things, right? 5 things, right? It's important for us to build domestic excellence, which means that we have to put in capacities which are global. They will be able to produce at cost which are very similar to what we have across the globe. That's important, because if we are very, very high cost capacities, we will not be competitive. We will then only have to depend on the Indian consumption, which has to go up, right? Otherwise, we have that difference. So it's important to build up those domestic excellences. It's important to build up our talent pool, right? The need of the industry, the talent need of the industry, which was there earlier, is completely different, right? We run our plants in the US sitting out of Chennai, right? So the skill set are completely different. So, when you're talking about industry-academia relationship, I think we need to train our, new students on those kind of initiatives, and that excellence building is very important. We need to look at increasing CapEx utilization, because that's a very, very important piece, because if you are putting in CapEx, you will have your ROI requirement. Your CapEx utilization is just 40-50%, your asset utilization is 40-50%. You'll be in significant challenges over a period of time to kind of run your asset. And all these petrochemical assets, you have to run it somewhere around 75-80% to be profitable, right? We know we run our assets, right? If you come down to 50-55%, you have significant amount of cost which comes in running those assets. Expanding global footprint, and we see a lot of Indian companies which are growing across the globe and setting up plants. They are acquiring plants across the globe. That's a very, very nice sign, because then you're securing your supply chain. Then you're talking about mergers, acquisitions, licensing, technology, as I think Praveen mentioned. That's one important parameter. And then comes sustainability, circular economy, which I think India is very nice at, right? We are doing a lot of work in this particular area, but there are certain things which we can look at, right? So, how did we do it in Dow, right? So we had in 2005 our sustainability goals, and we looked at the footprint, which means we looked at overall reducing cost, waste, and all that stuff. So that was the first piece. Then in 2015, we looked at our handprint. So we looked at redesigning our products and processes for customers to see where the cost is, where the sustainability requirement is. And then moved into 2025 sustainability goals, where we looked at blueprint thinking, which means we looked at rethinking the business model, looking at how AI can come in, how AI can really help us in our sustainability goals. And in 2030, we are looking at climate protection, circular economy, and safer materials, because these are the important parameters which we have to move forward with. So moving very quickly to this 3 area, when you're looking at climate protection, circular economy, and safer materials, this is something which is non-negotiable when we are moving forward, right? And that's what the industry needs. That's what the new generation needs. So I will talk about what we are doing in climate protection, what, again, the Indian industry can do in climate protection, what we can do in circular economy, what kind of safer materials. So 89% of new products launched has a safer material piece. We do a lot of business risk reviews to really see that we are not launching any product which can have any impact in the next 5 to 10 years, right? So it's important for all of us here in India to really look at those kind of predictive intelligence to tell us that what is those safe chemistries, what are those regulations which are coming to the next 3 to 4 years, because we cannot be shielded from the global regulations. It's because of that gap, right? So it's very important for us to really move forward. Now let's look at how we are doing it, right? And the timing, and I'll not get into a lot of details, but we are looking at how we can do near term, mid term, long term. A lot of Indian companies are doing the same way, scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. Believe me, what we are doing majorly is scope 1, scope 2, right? But a majority of the carbon emissions coming from scope 3, right? So you'll have to really look at our value chains, purchasing, what we are making in India to really look at scope 3 emissions. That's where a significant amount of chunk of the strategy needs to go with, right? So optimizing the manufacturing facilities, increasing of clean energy. We spoke about hydrogens, we spoke about ammonia, green ammonia. We're talking about all different solar and all that stuff. But what we have to also think about is the clean energy needs to contribute and be cost effective. Otherwise, when you are setting up a plant, a big plant, and there you are very, very high cost, the industry is not paying, you actually can be in a difficult scenario. So you have to balance both of this out with respect to what kind of green chemistry investment you are doing, the cost. So maybe green hydrogen versus blue hydrogen. Now, blue hydrogen with 10% more CO2, but around 30% lower cost, can that be an option versus a complete green hydrogen, right? So those are things which you have to look at when you're looking into stuff. And what is important and what is difficult sometimes is that when you are talking about reduction, the last piece is very difficult, right? And it's significantly difficult because you have to spend a lot of money and technology to really come down to that carbon neutral, right? So these things are really important as an Indian manufacturing, and when you're talking about India growth, to look at all of this holistically, right? So with that, I come down to my last slide. How are we doing it? And I think the industry is doing kind of similar way. So we are looking at, and when people say green chemistry, what is green chemistry? Green chemistry is not bio-based chemistry, right? The green chemistry definition talks about the design of chemical products and processes that reduce or eliminate the use or generation of hazardous substances. That's green chemistry. And it's not just raw material, it's the whole process in itself when you're talking about green chemistry. How can you do it? You can do it through your polymer production, process innovation, you can do low carbon technologies, you can look at feedstocks, you can look at post-consumer recycling of different feedstock, put that feedstock into your system, and you can call renewable, bio, and all of that together. It doesn't have to be green or bio raw material coming into your system. Then you need to really look at your packaging redesigning, looking at biopolyethylene. If the biopolyethylene can be on the top line, kind of taking out alumina metallic packaging line in between. So all of those processes will actually lead and can also be called as green chemistries. But you have to be aware of greenwashing, right? That what is green versus what is not green, right? So what we are doing it is in a way called footprint and blueprint, right? So we talk about reduced carbon. So we are coming up with carbon neutral silicon in India, right? We are already working with building and infrastructure to talk about completely carbon neutral silicon. Believe me, silicon comes from the silicon metal, is the most energy intensive process, right? How can you get that carbon neutral? So that's kind of talking about an reduced carbon, bio-based, as I spoke about, bio-based polyethylene. Can you get that from starch? Can you actually look at corn? Can you look at bioethylene production? And from bioethylene, you you come up with bioplastics, right? You're talking about renewal. There's a lot of waste mattress, foam mattress, which is there in the Indian market. How can you get that in, convert that into polyols, and again reuse, right? So that's something which we are looking at, when you're talking about recycled content, and that's hazardous material, because if you see polyurethane, it's MDI, TDI, right? Toluene diisocyanate, and then you have polyols, right? So how can you really look at that? And then circularity, right? Looking at PCR resins, like plastic recycling, talking about biodegradable chemistries, look at how you can come up with different acrylic chemistries which are biodegradable, and then resource efficiencies. How can you look at thermal desalination and reduce the energy efficiencies drastically? So some of these initiatives can actually be looked at, and I am very sure, and I work, being in India, and we're working with a lot of Indian industry, and even Alok sir is here. So Indian Oil is doing a lot of work there, and the universities are doing a lot of work here. So we have to look at that chemical industry and Indian growth in that perspective very strategically, so that we reach that 2047 number. And I think with all the initiatives which Government of India is taking, that number is not that far away. So with that, I would like to conclude my speech. I think I've taken 2-3 minutes more than what I was allocated, Praveen, but thanks a lot. Thanks for your kind hearing.